Botton is, he's from somewhere in Europe. Oh my gosh. I know he lives in London, but I'm pretty sure he's like Swiss or something like that. Anywho, he's a philosopher. He's a philosopher who he writes. If you don't know who he is, he writes a lot of sort of pop philosophy books. He's kind of like, if you've ever read The Subtle Art of Not Giving a F*** by Mark Manson, Alain was kind of doing that kind of stuff a while ago, even before that, so similar stuff. And I just find his books, most of his books, to be pretty easy to read, and I'm kind of interested in philosophy, so I think he gets a lot of good ideas and puts them into like an easily digestible kind of manner. So I have read this book a couple of times and written a lot in the pages, as you'll probably be able to see. So I know some people might find that as like sacrilege, writing in a book or even folding the pages down. I know my boyfriend can't stand that, but I think books are there to be enjoyed, so I enjoy it. So I'm just going to be talking about flipping through some pages and pulling out some interesting insights. I won't be, reading word for word too much. I might be pulling out some quotes, but I want this to be more of a review, or even a translation into a bit more of a modern school of thought, because I think as great as Alain de Botton is, he's like a 60 or 70 plus British dude, so and this was written a few years ago now, so I think everything in this is still super relevant. It's quite timeless what he talks about, but maybe I'll just pull some stuff out and think of some more current examples. He has a couple of other books that are worth a read. This one is Status Anxiety. Another book is The Consolations of Philosophy. Which is there. Another one is Essays in Love, which I have, but I'll admit I have not read, because, like I said, I'm not sure if someone, I don't know, maybe I'm judging a book by its cover and by its author, because I don't know what I could learn about love from someone like him. No offense, Alain, but maybe I'll give it a read and kind of just see what it's like anyway. But another one that's really good is called The News. The News, it's kind of it's timeless as well. I mean, it was written before TikTok, before all that stuff. So, but I really think that it's still relevant, and it's worth a read too. But let's get into this. I might just have a little sip of wine. So, and he also has a book called How Proust Can Change Your Life, which is also good. So basically, he kind of, defines status anxiety as, basically like we can seek a fortune and fame for no other reason than to kind of secure the respect and attention of people who would otherwise ignore us. basically status anxiety is wanting that kind of status for no other reason than to want it, if that makes sense. And he talks about it in a bunch of different with a bunch of different topics like lovelessness and snobbery and expectation, meritocracy and dependence, and then he offers some solutions. But yeah, basically he sees status anxiety as a worry so pernicious as to be capable of ruining extended stretches of our lives. When we fail to conform to the ideals that society has laid out for us, it can, and status anxiety can be provoked by many things, like the state of the economy, or your personal career, or finances, or even just conversations with people, and also the success of your friends and family, and people who aren't your friends and family. You can be jealous, but so basically the thesis, what he wants to lay out in this book, is that status anxiety possesses an exceptional capacity to inspire sorrow, so it's a bad thing, and that hunger for status, like all appetites, can have its uses. So I guess he kind of talks about all the hard work that people put in because they have status anxiety, and all the amazing accomplishments and achievements that come from that. So while it can be harmful, it can also be good as well. But that he also says that the most profitable way of addressing the condition of status anxiety is to just speak about it and understand it. So I'll just kind of flip through, be lots of page turning, and just kind of skim it and pull out interesting things as I go. One of the main causes for status anxiety is lovelessness. So he talks about we all have two great loves of our lives, and the desire for status is something that is born in us. We're born with this desire to be loved, and we have the first great love story of our life is our quest for sexual love. I think he's kind of ignoring like the love from our family as the first one, but I would say you could almost say there's three. There's the quest for sexual love, or it doesn't need to be sexual, I don't think, but quest for external love, and then the second is a quest for love from the world. So we want people to love us even if we don't love them back. I think that's quite an important thing to note. They're both just as intense and complicated. He talks about the consequences of love and neglect there. And obviously you would have status anxiety if you want people to love you. And also snobbery. I love this chapter, it's a very interesting one. And he talks about the origins of the word snobbery, and it came from Oxford and Cambridge colleges, and they used to write sine nobilitate, nobilitate, and that just means without nobility on the names of the ordinary students when they wrote down the lists of the examination. So you'd have a list of important noble students, your dukes and your duchesses. Well, no, probably not duchesses, probably just dukes. Of your aristocracy, you've had a list of those, and then you'd have a list of those sine nobilitate, which they shortened to S.NOB. So S.NOB, snob. So it's interesting that the word to describe someone who was without status is now used to describe someone who is, snobbish about having status. But you kind of all of this is very interesting. I'm not skimming over it because it's not interesting. I highly recommend you get this book. But just in the interest of time, it's been a while since I've read it, so I'm just going to look at things that I've written down. So it talks about. Excuse that plane. I might just have a sip of wine while that plane goes past. So, and he's very funny actually. There's some, he has some quite funny stories in here as well to explain things. But he's saying that the problem of snobbery is compounded by newspapers and like I said, this was written when newspapers were a thing. I would say you just say that the problem of snobbery is compounded by everything, by all of social media, all of the internet, everything. Because snobs combine a weak capacity for independent judgment with an appetite for the views of influential people. So snobs kind of don't really judge for themselves. They judge based on who they respect and what those people who those people judge. So if you follow someone famous on Instagram, you're probably gonna be snobby about the same things they're snobby about. This is a funny little old example of snobbery here. There's a few little illustrations in this book, and I just love it's from a cartoon in a newspaper from 1892, and it says, "There go the Spicer Wilcox's mama. I'm told they're dying to know us. Hadn't we better call?" "Certainly not, dear. If they're dying to know us, they're not worth knowing. The only people worth our knowing are the people who don't want to know us." It's amazing how relevant that still is. Have you ever just wanted someone to like you so bad, and they basically don't know you exist? I feel like when people's reputations or their statuses precede them, it's harder to develop your own opinions of who they are and what you actually think of them. If you meet someone who you've heard a lot about, good or bad, it's really hard to tell what you think of them if you've heard so much about them before. And then this part just talks about like the things that you collect to show your status, and whether it be in 1852 it was this like ginormous piece of furniture, but today's version of that is just sneakers, bags, like stuff. Even you might think that you're immune to all of that kind of stuff, and you just get things because you like them, but I can guarantee you there's so much that you have just because even if I used to think that I'm the kind of person, I don't like to wear a shirt that has a brand name on it. I'm like, I just get things that are from an op shop and they're vintage. Well, that's a status symbol in itself. None of us are perfect, none of us are immune to this, I don't believe. Whether it's, even if it's not stuff, it could still be, the restaurants you go to, or the food truck you go to, or say if you're meeting a friend and you really want to impress them with your lack of, stuff, and you've got this backpacker coming to your house and you want to show them how much you don't care about material things. You might talk to them about books and skills and writing and art and conversation skills, and knowledge can be a symbol of status as well. You can have nothing in the world, and you can but you can sort of use your intelligence and your knowledge as a status symbol, because look what you've learned. It can be anything, and yeah, I'm not saying it's bad. There's nothing bad about it. It's just the way it is. And this bit's about expectation, so about how the world moves so quickly, and there's this sort of expectation that we've got to keep up with it, and I guess that's late capitalism, ever since the Industrial Revolution, things have moved so quickly, and it's the reason iPhones, people keep getting new iPhones like every time they come out. Like, they're basically the same, but you just kind of want more and more and more. It lists all these. It's basically a history of like new things in the 20th century, and how they were created, and before they were created, before they were sort of a big thing and people could buy them, no one kind of needed them, or no one thought they needed them. As someone, I work in advertising, and so I find that really interesting, that you can think you don't want something, but then lo and behold, you want something. So this bit is about equality, expectation, and envy. I'm just going to read this to figure out what's going on. I think it's about how people are afraid of being deprived. One thing that's not in here, which I find super interesting, like I said, being in advertising, was do you remember if you even if you weren't from America, I'm from Australia, and I remember the campaign called Got to Milk. It was an advertising campaign, and I don't know if it's still running, but it ran for a long time, and it's by the milk industry, by the dairy industry, and it was originally based on the premise that it would show these delicious, like, thick, chocolatey, like sticky, like, cakes, and it's something that looks like really, I don't know, dense, and it looks like something you really need a drink of milk with, because they're so rich. And but it was a big move back then in advertising to not show the product, and they didn't show milk in this. All they did was say "got milk," and that was because when people saw it, they felt like, oh, I really need milk. You see something that you feel deprived of, if that makes sense. I don't know if I explained it enough, but yeah, we have this, like, fear of not having, that is so strong, and especially when other people have it, that's when it's envy. and because we don't have it, then we are not enough. Not that we don't have enough, but we are not enough. But the thing is, there's no kind of limit to how much stuff or how much knowledge or how much just anything, our sense of an appropriate limit of that. It's not decided by us, or we can't. It's decided by society, basically. We can't appreciate what we have in isolation, and there's a good example which I'll show you of what I mean here. You'll understand it a little better. So can you see this? So here we have 2 sets of 5 people, and when you look at this one, you can see all 5 people are happy. That's because they all have the same amount of stuff. They all have the same as who they're around, as their peers. And these guys are the same height as these guys here. But you pop in someone who has more, this lanky fellow here, and suddenly they feel like they don't have enough. So it's all relative. What we think we're happy with is relative to who else is around and what they have. It doesn't matter whether you live, in a mansion or in a cabin in the woods or in a boat. That's fine. But it all just depends on what other people have, on your peers, because when we look at, I feel like we're often quite harsh on celebrities and rich people. I'm not saying that they are, that we should be looking up to them as great examples. But they, people who seem to have a lot have just as much status anxiety as we do. Maybe more because there's more at stake, I don't know. But, you get to a certain level and you just want more. I think there's, I can't remember what kind of study or whatever it was, but there was, this study, and I think it was, you reach a certain amount of income or of money, of wealth, and I think it's about, I don't know, $80,000 equivalent Australian, I'm not sure. And then, people think that they want more and more and more in order to make them happier. But apparently, once you've got a certain amount, and that means, you can survive pretty comfortably, you're not below the poverty line. Once you reach a little bit higher than that, you kind of stop getting happier the more money you get. So they interviewed people who had different amounts of money, and that's what they found, was that there was no correlation between having more money than that amount and being happier, because at some point you just don't need, you can make it work, you live within your means. So this talks about peer groups, and whether or not you belong in a certain peer group. An extreme example, because and this is important because, you know, whether or not you belong in an extreme, in a peer group, you know, that relates to how you feel about your own status, like whether you belong in a different one, or whether you're happy in the peer group you're in. Because I think feeling like you belong in the peer group you're in, I think that makes you happier. That's what he's saying. But yeah, an extreme example is like Aristotle declaring, and this is definitely not correct, Aristotle declaring that it was enslaved nature to be slaves. But, you know, a more modern example, that's obviously not correct, but a middle class Western example might be something like, you know, in my kind of in my circles, most people have gone to uni. You know, no one's really super rich or anything, but middle class, I guess. But a lot of people have this. They seem to have this kind of attitude or hang up towards the working class, the people in the suburbs, people who live further out of the city. Like, but it's easy to act like you're better than someone because you went to uni, rather, you know. But just because they don't have an arts degree, doesn't mean that they're worth less than you, or just because your political values might differ, it does not mean that you're better than them. And this part talks about self-esteem. What I've written here is that envy and expectation are worse when anything's possible. I don't know what I wrote there. Oh, I think that's like, yeah, because they talk a lot about you know, America. He talks a lot about America as an outsider. I'm just getting a sip of wine. So what I find fascinating, and I don't know, I've only been to America a couple of times, and I don't personally know like a huge amount of Americans. I only know a few. But from what I've seen in, you know, American culture and, you know, films and books and music and stuff, is that, you know, there's this dream that Americans are kind of sold, that anything is possible. You know, you can do anything, and while that's amazing in the fact that, you know, you can, I guess you can do anything you set your mind to, but I think the way it's presented is flawed. Sorry, my camera stopped for some reason, but I'm not exactly sure where it stopped. I stopped speaking around 2 pages later, so I'm just gonna repeat a little bit. So basically what I was saying is that not the individual Americans, but this sort of aura of you can do anything in America, created by the culture and the society, not anyone in particular's fault, but this sort of thing that people believe that you can do anything is not, you know, necessarily possible for everybody. There's only so many seats at the table. There's only so much money to go around, and it's harmful for people because, you know, I feel like you know, so much is out of people's hands, and yes, there are a lot of people who do succeed, and this is not just America, this is everywhere. Everywhere that you know, even in Australia and in Britain, like you're sold this dream of you can do anything. Technically technically, yes, technically, if you grow up poor, you can go to university and, and get a high-paying job and be amazing. Not saying that that's what success should mean for everybody, because everyone should have their own idea, and if you don't have your own idea of success, try not to just riff off, the idea of success that you watched on The Apprentice all those years ago, because that is not healthy. You need to have your own idea of success. Ask yourself, what is success to you? And I bet if you really think about it, all you want to be is happy, right? What makes you happy? Anyway, I digress. I think, yes, we can do anything, but, it's so much harder for a lot of people to reach those heights of success. And, he talks about that, the American poor, but basically, like, wherever you live, if you're not very wealthy, then you can't, because of this sort of meritocracy, you can't see your position in life as anything other than your own fault. And that's really damaging. This is not someone's fault because they grew up poor and, they didn't make something of themselves. That's so damaging. So the more you talk about how many opportunities you have, the more likely you are to feel bad that you didn't do it. It's kind of like how we're currently in our, I don't know, can't remember how many times lockdown in 2021 in Australia, and ever since the first one, I think everyone's kind of let up on the bread making and the exercising now, but especially in the first one, there was so much pressure to reinvent yourself, to come out with an entirely new body, get a dog, bake bread, just like be so damn productive. And if you didn't, then you just kind of felt like you were wasting your time. So you're not wasting your time. You're not a failure, don't worry. I guess he talks about modern examples, and he uses Tony Robbins, so that's how new this book is. But yeah, he's part of the problem, right? You control your own emotional, mental, physical, and financial destiny. And if you don't, you're a loser. And he talks a bit about Rousseau here. But you should read it to find out more. So I've written a note here that says, thanks to our modern world and advertising and the media. This is a question. Do you think our desires to have more and to be more can ever be quenched? And if not, can we ever really be satisfied? Yeah. I don't know. The answer to that question is probably why I wrote it. I don't know if someone living in a world where they're bombarded with advertising every minute of every day, how can we ever not want more? Like, if you are in a working to middle to upper class world, wherever, unless you are living in a hut in the woods, not surrounded by people, and you never need to buy anything unless you are living that life, I feel like we're always going to want more. A lot of people are better at controlling that want, but I feel like we're always going to want more, right? He talks a bit more, we tell ourselves that we should be responsible for their condition, our condition in society. He talks about the lies we tell ourselves and the stories. It's all very interesting. I won't ruin it for you. And the lies that we tell ourselves about success. And how if you're successful, because we're living in a meritocracy, if you are successful in accordance with the rules of that meritocracy, if you are quote unquote successful, then that means that you are a better person because you were able to win and and if you're poor, then you are not a better person. People always look down on the working class as though, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to classify, I don't believe people belong in categories like this, but for the sake of the argument, people look down on those with less stuff and money and education and blame them for it. He finishes off by saying, to the injury of poverty, so on top of poverty, a meritocratic system now adds the insult of shame. So not only are you poor, it's your fault. I might leave it there for now, because there's a lot more to talk about, but let me know if you found any of this interesting. And I can definitely keep going. Let me know what you liked and you didn't like about this one, and maybe I'll make it a bit more coherent next time. I didn't really prepare.